Good afternoon, Tri-Cities. It's Friday at 1 o'clock, a new time for us, and it's time for Coffee with Karl. I'm Karl Dye from Trideck, and we are excited today to have on our behalf, here they come online, all of our local District 8 members of the legislature. And so thanks all of you for making time to get together with us. Looking forward to a good discussion today. I am going to start to my left and introduce Representative April Connors. I'm just going to call you guys, instead of Representative-elect, I'm just going to go with Representative. So Representative Connors, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me here today. Super great to be here.
You bet. Appreciate your time. Representative Stephanie Barnard. Stephanie, good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here again.
Great to see you. And last but not least, and I've been calling him Senator for 6 months now, so it's nice that officially I can call him Senator, but Senator Matt Boehnke, thanks for joining us this morning.
And thanks, Karl, and congratulations to the two House members. Looking forward to the Mighty Eight team here today.
Excuse me, Senator Boehnke, you've always called this the Mighty Eight, and you've got a great team through you guys. This is going to be a great legislative session. We look forward to some great things to come. Let's get right into it. And we're going to start off with the coffee story. And so I'm going to kick us off. I've got our old school Trideck logo before we worked together with the Regional Chamber and Visit Tri-City. So I just wanted to give a really quick acknowledgement to a community leader that we had pass this week. Mike Lawrence was the DOE site manager for Richland that transitioned from the production mission into the cleanup mission. He served as the DOE site manager from 84 to 90, and he really led the way. There was a great article in the Herald this week about him. It really highlighted some of the accomplishments that he did. It told a great story about how he really fought for our community in putting together a tri-party agreement with the state of Washington, EPA, and DOE that still is in effect today. It's being negotiated for some changes and tweaks, but it's really what has led us into this cleanup area to make sure that we get collectively Hanford cleaned up. Mike was a really great leader. I had a chance to meet him a couple times because he served with Trideck on our Mid-Columbia Energy Initiative from 2011 till 2020. And, the article was great. I didn't get to know him very well. I met him, like I said, a couple times, but just wanted to really acknowledge Mike's role in our community and being such a tremendous leader. Just let his family and friends know that our hearts and our prayers are with them this week. And, really set the bar pretty high for everybody else as far as leadership in the Tri-City. So wanted to make sure that we acknowledged Mike first. Let's go to Representative-elect Connors. Do you have a mug or a coffee story for us this morning?
I do. Thank you for that tribute. It was really nice. I was in a meeting yesterday, and his name was also brought up very fondly in that meeting. So I had a hard time deciding because I do collect coffee mugs, and I usually collect them when I travel. But I didn't bring a travel mug today. I just brought an organization that is super important to me, and it is the FFA, which is the Future Farmers of America in Washington State. And I was involved in that organization and still am. I was a past state FFA officer with them. I actually still have my blue jacket right here that I will be taking with me to Olympia because they've already reached out to have me speak when they're there on the Hill Day. And organization has always been important to me. It is one of the premier leadership organizations for students that are growing up in high school. And it certainly is what helped form some of my leadership skills throughout my life. And I just love it. So cheers to the FFA today. That's
awesome. We appreciate you sharing that. I think, one of the things that we are involved with and work with is workforce development. And, FFA is such an integral part of so many high schools throughout the country. And even, the specific ag education programs that, do cover so many of those vocational things that you need to know as a farmer, whether you go on to a future in ag or not. It's such a tremendous part of our education system. So thanks for acknowledging and giving a shout out to FFA. That's awesome.
Well, I kept on an ag too. I am married to a farmer. So,
exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, Representative Barnard, what do you have for us?
I have for you today, this is a mug that was created especially for me from an organization that I've been with for about almost 35 years. This is the organization of of my children, my family. So this mug was made especially for me. And as you can see, there's a little daisy and a little butterfly
Nice.
and a little heart. And so
That's
in
awesome.
typical fashion, I've got my hot cocoa in here with whipped cream.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the most important part. So
Let's see if you can do it. Yep. Two
Right
times in a
there.
row, not getting any on your
Right
nose.
there.
It's a good job.
Yep. No mustache this time either. So what I've done for that organization is gained a lot of leadership roles. And let's see, I've been a psychiatrist, I've been a taxi, I've been a tutor, I've done all of the things, like a chef, and a housekeeper, and all of the things. So all of that wonderful experience has been gained through that wonderful organization of my family.
That's perfect. Thank you. Senator Boehnke, first of all, I have to acknowledge that I didn't realize the last time you're on, I didn't even get a chance to talk about your mug. So I stand corrected, and I'm looking forward to your mug story. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Karl. No, just trying to give you a hard time because it's the best part, I think, of this is that community outreach that you do. And then coffee always is kind of a symbolizing of bringing people together, just having something that we could sit down and chat. So appreciate that. Mine today is with the, if we get it up to the camera, right, the Big Red 1, 1st Infantry Division.
Yeah.
So shout out to all the veterans, having been there for over 21 years and serving our country at 27-ish locations around the globe, and moved 27 times with my family. And those 21 years, it's just the experiences of things that we could bring back to our community. But always grounds you, always remembers, you know, no matter what we're doing here, our freedoms were fought for by a lot of people that sacrificed a lot. So appreciate that. Thanks, Karl.
No, thanks, Senator. It was great to see you this week at the ribbon cutting for the local National Guard Armory. And I learned a lot about the unit and the history of the National Guard in Washington State. So thanks for your support for funding that building and continuing to support the Guard. Obviously, it's something that's close to your heart, but it really means a lot to all of us in the community too. Thanks.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have more on that in the future of kind of putting our arms around them. Like we'd mentioned, when they come to a city, a community, it's our community involvement as well to protect and take care of the family members who serve, and especially right there. So appreciate that, Karl.
Well said. Thank you. Well, let's get into some introductions. I know Senator and Representative Barnard have been on before, but let's start with Representative Connors. Can you tell us, you talked a little bit about being married to a farmer and your background in FFA, but can you give us a little more? And we'll make it a little bit briefer than stump speeches. I know you guys just got done with campaign season, so you probably had many chances to practice this, but can you give us the truncated version, Representative Connors?
Yeah, you bet. Actually, yesterday I am also I'm a real estate agent in the Tri-Cities and have been for 22 years, and have a background prior to that even in commercial real estate development. And so real estate's always been part of my life. I went to WSU. I'm a Cougar, go Cougs. I graduated with a degree in communications from Washington State, and TV broadcasting, didn't do it. But yesterday, and I'm not going to make the 30 seconds, but I'm on the Catholic Foundation board as well. And we actually had to practice a 30-second stump speech about the foundation board yesterday. And I can never do it quite that fast. And then I start talking faster to try to get it out. So I've been in the Tri-Cities for a long time. My husband and his family are 3rd generation farmers here, apples, wheat, corn, or not corn, but potatoes, onions. And we have 4 kids that are here. Well, 2 are at Southridge High School, and the other 2 one is at University of Washington, one's at University of Arizona. Our family was bridged with adoption. So we have 2 biological kids and 2 adopted kids. So we're really connected with the countries of Guatemala and Haiti. And so that's kind of a quick overview of our family. So.
No, it's really great. Thank you. Representative Barnard, do you want to go next with just kind of your truncated stump speech, if you will?
Okay. I no stumping here, but I will introduce myself for 30 seconds. How about that? Okay. So I grew up in the Seattle area and lived there on the other side of the mountains for 18 years. Then shortly after a college stint, I moved to the Tri-Cities and have been here for the last, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to do math. It's got to be 27 years now. So 27. Okay. And that's, wow, that's a long time. And 6 kids and 2 still at home. I have a sophomore and a senior at Chiawana High School. I've lived in Pasco the entire time I've lived in the Tri-Cities. And let's see, working for the Chamber Government Affairs Director, that was how I met you, our little neighbors across the way.
That's right. Yep.
And you're not little. I didn't mean little in that way. You guys are great. And it's been so fun getting to know all of you and being able to work really closely with you through the years. And, on the Ledge Council and staff lead on that. And then the MyTri Regional Vision Project, the work that the Chamber's done on that has been foundational and hopefully continues to be transformational for the Tri-Cities. I am also the vice chair of the Tri-Cities Civility Caucus, which began when Congressman Newhouse came into town, and that has been going for, I want to say, 4.5 years now. So excited to be here today, and thanks again for having me.
That's awesome. Thank you. Senator Boehnke, you talked about it, obviously a long career in the military and the Army as an aviator and cybersecurity, but can you give us any other details about your background?
Oh, thanks, Karl. Most people know, grew up in the area and quickly, joined the military. So left after college, actually helped pay for college to move out and joined the military, learned a lot from the experience of being a leader throughout the different levels of the place we were at, but came back, worked out at Energy Northwest for about 1.5 years, 2 years, worked down at a little hydro dam just south of us with McNary and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then really got pulled over to when a guy named Rich Cummings, who was a great mentor of mine that some of the fans on this call and the Zoom would probably know from being president of Columbia Basin College, worked out a deal with Stephen Ashby about seeing into the future about cybersecurity and bringing it to community college in our area. So I helped become the first director at Columbia Basin College, and still teaching with our cybersecurity students to give a 4-year degree at the cost of a community college level. So that really is important to me to give back to the community and especially in higher education.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So for our guests on Zoom, we're going to get into our session here. Just want to point out, if you want to use the question and answer feature down below, we've already got one question that we'll get to in a little bit. If you're on social media, you can put your question in the comment section and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. So let's go around and talk about what are you looking forward to in the new session? And if you have any legislative priorities and you've been thinking about that, and I'm pretty sure that all of you guys do. Let's kind of reverse it now. We'll start with the Senator first. What do you got that you're working on, Senator, in this upcoming session?
Thanks, Karl. I think I might be the only one that's, we got our announcements for committees, so I can announce we have committee assignments.
Oh,
so
yeah.
These kind of focus our areas. Was honored with the opportunity to be ranking on human services, but I'm also available for Business and Financial Services Committee. And because we're smaller, energy and technology, as well as ways and means. So I'm going to be on 4.
Great.
So there's
Wow.
a couple of us who are going to take on that extra load. And I think part of that is being a freshman, like anything, you got to earn your stripes and work in there. But
Sure.
part of that is helping the mighty eighth. You're going to hear this a lot from the 3 of us, I think, is that we want to be leaders in the state and kind of push that so where we have a bigger voice from our community and get that into the different committees that are up there. So like anything, energy is going to be a big one, the hydrogen hub, carbon capture, where we can lead that clean up to clean energy focus that we've been talking about with a lot of the different groups. And you mentioned Mike Lawrence, his efforts, it goes back to people like that, to Mike, to Volpentest, to Shirley Hankins, to others who are leading in these areas for the last 20, 30 years. And then kind of carrying that to the state to where we are the center of the universe for a lot of these. And we talked about being the hub for this. We need to be at the meeting. We need to be when we're at the meeting, kind of leading that agenda and kind of leading in those efforts that we have here locally. So those are some of the big ones. And of course, continuing to lead the Manufacturing Council, coming with 1170. Now that that bill got passed, we're on a meeting yesterday, and we're going to continue the efforts of trying to grow our state and double the number of manufacturing jobs for women-led organizations and minority-led organizations as well. So those are kind of the overarching big ones, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the more details here in a bit. But
you bet. That's a great list, and a really it's great to hear the committees that you're on. I think that's going to represent collectively us really well. Representative Barnard, how about you? What do you look forward to in the session? And have you guys been able to caucus or pick your committee assignments yet? What are you going to be working on?
So we haven't received our assignments yet, but we're expecting those in the next couple of days. So you'll be the first to know. Like I'll literally text you as soon as I know.
Okay. Great.
But let's see. I'm hoping to be on energy. That was my top priority. And then my number 2 was economic development, and my number 3 is finance. So hopefully I can get all 3 of those, because I feel like that is what will best represent our community for my, for what I specialize in and what the work that I've done. So hopefully that all pans out. I have already caucused and met with the hydrogen caucus, and also I've already done some work to create a new caucus, and I still need to. This is just so fresh, right off the press. I haven't even had a chance to talk to Senator Boehnke about this yet, but I've already reached across the aisle to start a nuclear caucus. So we're working together to put something to get something started, and that will be a new caucus in Olympia. And
great.
So some of the things, the priorities my priorities fall directly into that nexus of agriculture, natural resources, energy, all of those things, Tri-Cities.
That's awesome. Those are really good, and excited to learn more about the nuclear caucus and the hydrogen caucus. Is there anybody from the east side that's on the hydrogen caucus out of curiosity, or is it kind of west centric? Or
I'll let Senator Boehnke answer that. He's been a hydrogen caucus member way longer than I have.
yeah, Karl, thanks, Stephanie, as well. And glad to see you on there. And the big piece in the state is having that balance between the House and the Senate. I learned this a lot from Senator Brown, is making sure we're working in parallel in that communication. So I was asked and was reached out to by not only Representative Hackney, but our Barnard, who are kind of the co-chairs and leading that in the House to be the Senate. So we try to get a Senate D. I think there's 2 still in the running. They haven't decided on who the Senate D would be representing, but I was honored to be asked to be the Senate R on that caucus as well. I'm looking forward to working with you on the Senate and as a senator for the nuclear caucus as well, Stephanie. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's great. And I wasn't trying to be, preferential to the east versus west, but I know in the hydrogen hub proposal the state put in, and they're still working on it, but we're just always, trying to make sure that we on the east side of the mountains that we have some, that some local projects could be included in that, and it's always part of things. So that's awesome. Thank you both for working on the hydrogen hub and the new nuclear hub. That's really excited. Representative Connors, how about you? What are you looking forward to? What, any ideas on legislation? And then what did you ask for your committee assignments?
Sure. Well, we had a great week last week. We went over kind of for freshman orientation week, and I was really excited. It was done through the clerk's office. So I was very excited that we got to meet with our new freshman Democrats as well, and feel like we made some really good relationships to hopefully bridge some aisle crossers this year.
Yeah.
The one thing that I have to say too with Representative Barnard and Senator Boehnke that I appreciate so much is we are really working hard to form a team here in the Tri-Cities and really make the 98th super strong. And, we all had the opportunity to meet together before we went to our orientation week. So when we were picking our committees that we wanted to be on, that we were making sure we were trying to cover as much of the Tri-Cities that we all could to make it the best that we could do for our district. So just not all wanting to be like, all of us would want to be on energy. I mean, that's just that's a given, but it's important. First, Stephanie is very well versed in that. She's the right person to be on that committee. So we're all pushing for that. I'm interested in leadership as well, and was fortunate. I'm going to be the assistant whip for the Republican Party the next sessions. I'm so excited about that. Representative Clicker and I are working on a Tri-City caucus that we're trying to put together, which would be the 8th, the 9th, the 15th, and the 16th, because just the mighty 8th working together, we don't feel is enough. We really want to put together more of a local caucus that is really pushing for ideas that relate to the Tri-Cities. As far as what I'm interested in committee wise, housing is my number one. It's what I do for a living. We're 250,000 units short in Washington State. So it's going to be important. I'm sure the missing middle housing bill is back, and it's important that we are heard on our side of the state about local control that still needs to continue to happen as it relates to the housing industry. So I'm hoping to be a big voice on that. I did also ask for appropriations, which I know is a big ask as a freshman, but we, as Stephanie asking for finance, we feel like we need some leadership from the Tri-Cities that is on budget committees. And then of course, ag would be a number 3 for me, but that committee is pretty full, and I don't know who would be stepping off of that, but would feel like I would have a lot to add to that committee. But if that's not the case, we also talked about healthcare, which we have 3 hospitals that are in our region. And so I think it's important our healthcare industry needs to be supported here as well.
Oh, that's great. Just out of curiosity on housing, has there been legislation that comes up? I mean, obviously, I know we've talked about it before. We've all collectively talked about it, realized that it's a challenge in the Tri-Cities. It's almost like our market's caught up to the rest of the state or the rest of the country in some cases. But is there anything functionally that you think could be, or, that you might want to work on or propose that would be, to start to address some of the issues with housing statewide that would have an effect here in the Tri-Cities?
So Representative Barkas has done a lot of really good bills in the past that have passed through the House, but not made it through the Senate, that deal with a little bit more permitting, some of the diversification of what you can build on a lot, whether it be a single family or a duplex, but also keeping existing neighborhoods safe. And so I've been really busy. I've been trying to, in my spare time, watch the 3 housing bills that didn't make it through last year, to see what was completely in them, what could be fixed, how they can work with our local community. Pasco has a meeting next week that I'm going to attend. They've done a really good job of effectively stepping into what some of this missing middle housing has what they've accomplished without being regulated by the state with zoning, which is really, when we talk about the Tri-Cities, we really, most of what I'm hearing is we don't want the state to actually regulate all of our zoning, that we would appreciate to have control over the zoning of our areas. And so just really digging into what Pasco's doing to see if we can use them as a, not a pilot program, but at least some of their ideas that they've had to try to help in the state level. And so I'm just ready to step in and especially learn on the housing bit of it. Because that's where I feel that I'll be the most effective probably for the Tri-Cities and the state.
Oh, that's great. This summer, we had a chance, we were asked to host by the Lieutenant Governor, the LCEDAR committee, which maybe somebody could help me with the acronym, but I know it's economic development. Senator Boehnke, you were part of it. Do you remember what it stands for?
No, I know it's economic development. So thanks for putting
We'll just go with economic development. And
I was in the House, Karl. Come on.
I know, but it was cool that you could join us. And obviously your predecessor, Senator Brown, had served on it for a long time. And there was a great acknowledgement of her service. But in that, we were asked to put together like a housing panel, and Jacob Gonzalez from the city of Pasco, I think you're right, Representative Connors, was really, and even the Lieutenant Governor said, he goes, we've talked about affordable housing, workforce housing around the state. And he's like, Jacob has done the best job of anybody I've ever heard. So that was great feedback, I think, coming from the state level. And, they're doing great things. I think we could all learn from what they're doing at Pasco for sure.
I would like to see our cities get together with Pasco and really work on what they've done to make our community, at the forefront of it. So.
Yeah, well, and You talked about Representative Clicker, and of course, I know Representative Barnard worked in her chamber role with all of us on some FSEC legislation that he put forward, and at least got into committee, and then the governor vetoed it. But I know FSEC being another great example of local control, right? We're all in favor of like, hey, we've got a local process that works. We're following the state code. Let's run it through the local process first. So very common theme, obviously, for all of us here in the Tri-Cities. We got a couple questions. Why don't we go to the question and answer quickly, and then we'll get back into some of the things we talked about. But here's a jump ball from that says, I understand that new legislative session will be considering a proposed bill to adopt ranked choice voting in Washington State. Asking to hear from everybody on your position on this. And I know, like, I haven't followed that closely. I know they went to that in Alaska and it had an effect on some of the elections, but is that something that you guys are hearing? Will it come up in Washington State? And what do you think about it? Let's start with Representative Barnard first.
Sure. It's not something that I can comment on because I don't know enough about it. Again, okay. It's just not what I've been focused on. So I am really anxious to find out what it's all about and what they've been, if you said it's been it's already been implemented in Alaska.
Yeah, I know and I hadn't paid that much attention to it myself either. I don't know, Senator Boehnke, do you know more about it, or Representative Connors?
Let me jump in and kind of, so we had a bill last year. We were kind of working on the last 3 or 4 years. House Bill 1156 was kind of the leader of it. I know there was another one with Representative Walsh and I were kind of in the middle of working on the House Republican side. And that was getting the ranked choice voting, maybe a pilot program in the state and trying to see if it would work. I think Pierce County was the first one to kind of try it out at a local election side of the house so we could get some of the analytics, the data, the feedback, how much it would cost, manpower. I know working with Brenda Chilton with the Benton County office here locally, she's kind of been our subject matter expert at the statewide side of that house, but watching Alaska and even New York, I think, have gone through some of the ranked choice voting with it. It's getting more popular throughout, but there is still some other sides that we want to make sure we, keep an eye on what that means. Is it going to add more burden to our election systems? And of course, election integrity has been a very popular effort to make sure we trust our systems. We know every vote does count, and we want to fight to make sure those votes do count, no matter what systems we have in place.
Representative Connors, anything else to add, or have you followed it that closely? Do you know that much about it?
I haven't followed it very closely, but the things that I have heard are similar to what Senator Boehnke was saying, which is the confusion, I think, for the voters would be interesting to know more about, as well as the burden that it would put on our local auditors. I know that one of the candidates for Secretary of State seemed to be somewhat of a proponent of at least trying it in a larger or putting restrictions and rules for counties who wanted to try it. But again, going back to local control, like, would it be something that's the whole state, or is it something that King County just wants to do, but Benton County doesn't want to do? And so I think it's important to have all the facts on it. And I do think it could be a little bit confusing for voters. So
yeah, it's a good point. I assume that you rank, here's my first choice, second choice, third choice, and then I assume it's like a weighted, like so many points for a first place vote, second place, and then statistically, and to your point, it seems like it would add to the confusion potentially and not be really clear on, we've got a system now that worked pretty well for a long time. So that's good. Thanks for you guys weighing in on that. Another question that we had was several bills have already been pre-filled this week for the upcoming session. Have any of them caught your interest? Of you guys, I think we talked about a couple bills that are coming up or been pre-filed. Any of you guys would want to comment on, or something that you've seen that you're watching coming through?
Well,
let's go to go ahead, Representative Barnard. Yes,
I signed on to a bill it was Jacqueline Maycomber, and it was apprenticeship. So I mean, we're in a workforce crisis right now, and we just need all the support and effort that can be poured into that. The number of that bill escapes me right now, but if you want to look at the prime sponsor, that's Jacqueline Maycomber, and that it's a strong bipartisan effort, and it's something that we tried to get that through last year, and it didn't happen for one reason or another. So this is a redo, and so hopefully that goes through. The more apprenticeships, the more programs like that, the stronger, the more we can pour into apprenticeships and internships and externships and all of the things will really have an impact on our local workforce being ready to be, shovel ready.
No, that's great. Apprenticeships, I think, are really interesting. A lot of times people think that it's only connected to organized labor, which they've got some amazing programs that do great in the skilled trades, but I think there's opportunities to open it up across the board, and hopefully that bill would be able to do that. Obviously, the regional chamber's been leading the local internship effort in coordination with AWB, Association of Washington Businesses, and had some great success. I know employers really appreciate it, so that could be a really interesting one. Senator Boehnke or Representative Connors, anything that you guys have seen file last week that you want to talk about or bring up?
Go ahead, April.
I have just been kind of in the background watching and learning, and I haven't signed on to anything yet. I'm trying to be real careful about what we're doing. I'm particularly watching for housing. I would like to watch for some of our police reform bills, which I think are going to be really important this session to come down and be paying close attention to those, especially as they relate to the Blake decision. And as well as pursuit laws. And I think those are all going to be very important this session as well. So right now I'm trying to be just real cautious and read and watch and try to be effective on what I'm working on. So
that sounds great. We had a question about the amendment to the Growth Management Act, and could a sunset clause be put in to help Tri-Cities start moving away from aspects of it? I know that we've talked about it, before about housing. The things that strike me about Growth Management Act, I'll just give you my take on it. What I'm trying to learn as well as it affects housing is that, it was implemented 20 plus years ago. I don't know the exact date, and it hasn't been amended ever. It has never been changed. Whereas what I've heard is that like Oregon has Growth Management Act, they've modified it many times. Think about business, right? That we're all involved in. How many businesses would start off with a business plan 20 some years ago and not make any changes to it as things change? And so, and I think I know where you guys are all at on it, but any chance on Growth Management Act or anything that you guys are hearing that, maybe we could at least have a statewide discussion about it? Because we are growing very, very quickly in the Tri-Cities. We all know that growth. We see the outcomes as it relates to housing, workforce, things we've already talked about, but where are you guys at on the Growth Management Act? And do you think that we'd have a chance to maybe have a bill come forth where at least there could be a discussion about it? Senator Boehnke, let's start with you.
Yeah, and kind of tailor off from the last one real quickly. Don't forget long-term care. Long-term care, we kind of punted the last two sessions.
That's right.
The big one coming through. And I noticed looking on HB 1000, Representative Stokesbury kind of taking the lead on that was really good. Kind of gathering up a lot of the issues that we've heard from people on long-term care. It's still coming up to a date. We still got to fix some of that issue. That's a big mess coming to us. The other one, I would say I signed on with Senator Dozier on technology in the Department of Corrections, but kind of leading the Parents' Bill of Rights so their parents have a right in the school districts. We heard that a lot throughout the last year of giving us more options in what's going on with the schools. But to your point on the GMA, I think it's about time. Like you said, anything with the GMA needs to have a lot more local control, and at least that opportunity to go ahead and evolve as different things have changed throughout the industry. And I'll kind of punt it over to Representative Connors as the lead kind of in this area and her expertise of what we can do in housing. All these different areas are ripe for an opportunity to grow and leverage those areas. And we can showcase to the rest of the country how we are leading in the 8th district and showcasing what we can do with the GMA. If that possibility is there, we should run amendments. We should kind of push this forward and lead in that effort.
Great point. Representative Connors.
I would like to see an amendment to the GMA as it relates to the housing crisis. I think right now with the amount of units that we are short, that there should definitely be some stipulation within the Growth Management Act if we are this short on housing. It doesn't necessarily pertain to the west side as much, where they don't have the ability in the land to move into, but in the Tri-Cities it matters. And it we have land, we have an abundance of land. I know sometimes people are concerned that we're taking it out of agriculture to move into housing. But if you look at going south of Kennewick, which is not in the GMA or not in the boundary right now, and that agricultural land, most of it isn't being used right now for agricultural purposes. And so I think there needs to be some kind of an amendment done for that.
That's a great point. I think kind of being a newcomer to the Tri-Cities, that's the amazing thing to me is, if even the irrigated ground, like if you can move the water right and the pivot and the infrastructure to the next parcel over, the next section over, that ground's potentially going to be just as productive as the ground that maybe you're building houses in. And that's completely different from the west side. I think that's the thing that strikes it. GMA seems to be kind of one size fits all for the whole state. And we have so many differences in the way that we farm, the type of soil conditions that we have, access to irrigation. I mean, so many different factors. To be able to open it up and have a reasonable conversation seems like a reasonable ask. I think those are really good points you bring up. Representative Barnard, anything you want to add on GMA or your thoughts about it?
Well, you alluded to this earlier, but this policy is old. I mean, we have to revisit this, not just to add or to amend it or change it. We need to do a deep dive into the GMA, and there needs to be some kind of and I don't know how it's done, but maybe a joint task force created to look at this policy and to take it apart piece by piece and potentially regionalize more than what is already currently in effect. So, like you said, and I think that was a really good point. So, if you were a business and you get the same business plan, that's not okay. You're going to want to change that. And strategic visioning and planning for the future, those are all things that should be regularly done with business, with communities, with and especially with something like the GMA, where it's just things are changing and we need to evolve with that and allow for the growth that is already here and to a greater extent in the future. So we need to take it apart and make the changes that are necessary to align with what's happening currently.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. We did have in the Q&A props for you guys that said this is the best group of elected officials that we've had from the Tri-Cities. So I wanted to give you guys that shout out. I'd agree. I've only been here for a short time, but I think you guys are already literally building the reputation of the Mighty Eight. And again, the caucus that you're talking about putting together with our other 3 districts represented here in the Tri-Cities makes so much sense, because I think you get back into that legislative body, it's all about the relationships that you build and those common ties that you have really. Quick update for everybody that's listening: if you want to learn more about the ranked choice voting system, Badger Club Forum just had that on yesterday. So it looks like you can in the chat, they've got their website there where you can watch a recording of it and learn more about it if you have any questions. So along that idea of being team members and everything else, we talked a little bit more about it. And Representative Barnard, you brought up the civility caucus, I think it was, and we talked a little bit about it, right? And we all know, like, very generally on the east side of the Cascades here, we're Republicans, and on the west side, they're Democrats, and realizing that that's not always the case, but bipartisanship and working together on getting things done. And I'll just give Senator Boehnke a big shout out, because I think he's done a great job. His House Bill 1170 last year really is bipartisanly supported throughout the state, right? I mean, who can argue with increasing manufacturing jobs? It's a great example of working together and being bipartisan. But can you guys comment on that? Like, I've already heard you talk about reaching across the aisle already and putting it together, but I think that's so great that you all can do that and be representative of us. Because I think from the community aspect, you know, what we'd like to have do for all of you to do is to go to Olympia and be able to accomplish things for us. And so, you know, working across the aisle, building those partnerships, that's the way it's going to get done. Like, we don't get anything done if we just go there and have rhetorical conversations, right? So anything you guys want to add on that, or any ideas about how do you do that? It's tough. But maybe some things that you've used in the past. And Representative Connors, let's start with you. I think obviously your FFA background, I mean, it's a huge part of what FFA does, right? It's legislative, training and practice and all those things.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, even in real estate, what I have to do is negotiate, problem solve, work with people, try to put a deal together. And, you know, I am basically willing to go and talk and work with anyone, but it is about, and I'll give this to Representative Barnard. When we were in our meeting in Olympia last week, she, you know, said, hey, this is not about just us being here this week and making relationships with the new Democrat leaders. It's also about us forming and continuing to forge these relationships together so that we can have conversations and we can reach across the aisle and we can work together. So it is something that's going to have to be continuing. It is a, you know, we at our meeting last week, I thought it was great. We had a new representative from the West Side that's from Pasco. So let's get her back to Pasco and let's show her what's going on in Pasco, since she lived here and grew up here. And but that is truly, you know, when you look at our numbers in the House, where we have 40, you know, to 58, and it's daunting to try to get something passed. So in order to be effective, we're going to have to reach across the aisle, and you know, and remind both parties, even the Democrats in Seattle, that they also have Republicans in their district, and we also have Democrats in our district. And so when we come to Olympia as representatives, we're there to serve everyone and try to get the common goals of our communities together. And so I think with the incoming group of freshmen that we met and built relationships with and went to dinner with, that we have a really good ability to forge good relationships this session. Do you feel the same way, Rep Barnard? I feel like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it helps when you have Senator Boehnke that's already laid the foundation. So, you know, everybody is open and willing to talk, and they speak so highly of him from across the aisle. And so the groundwork that he's laid, and for our prior legislators that also did a lot of work across the aisle, you know, that they have laid a great foundation for us. So we're able to go in and you know, finish what they started. So I one of the takeaways was, you know, we can disagree. You know, in the Civility Caucus here, the Tri-City Civility Caucus, we can completely disagree without being disagreeable. But it does take practice. I mean, it's hard because when you take things so personally, without being able, it's you know, it can be difficult. But once you've practiced, it just takes practice, just like everything else. So get together and have those conversations. It was really easy for me after the Hydrogen Caucus to walk up to Hackney, you know, who was chairing that caucus with Senator Boehnke, and say, hey, why isn't there a nuclear caucus? Could we maybe start something like that? And he's across the aisle in every way, but he, you know, he was very interested in that. And I give a lot of credit to Senator Boehnke for that, being able to, for those legislators across the aisle to be willing to hear us. So kudos to him for what he's done prior to us going. And then the other thing is, you know, we think we're so different, but we really do all have very similar core values. We all want security and safety of the citizens of Washington State. I mean, at the core of everything, of the core even of jobs and the economy. And what is the core of that? It all comes down to our values and what we value. And that is usually you can get that, you can just kind of winnow that down to safety and security. You want to be secure in your job. You want to have a roof over your head. You want to be able to afford, your groceries. You want to be able to afford your electricity and your fuel and to get to work and all of the and be safe in your community and make connections in your community. Everyone wants to be connected. Everyone wants to feel connected. I remember in my tribe when we were meeting together, there was one opportunity area that was inclusion, and we had a workshop with community stakeholders for inclusion. And those stakeholders came up with an overarching goal of having the Tri-Cities be the most welcoming city in the state of Washington. And I thought, you know what? We have the diversity here. We have, and that's a strength. That's such a strength to us. We have diversity of opinion. We have a diversity of ideology too. So it's so important for us to make those connections and show the state of Washington that we are the most welcoming community in Washington state. I'm committed to that. And I think it's important.
Really well said. Thank you. Senator Boehnke, everybody's giving you props. So how do you do it? What's your secret sauce, or how do you go into it? I know we've talked about it before, but how does it work? Or, what's worked for you in the past?
Well, thanks. And thanks, Representative Barnard and Connors, for the kind words, and others throughout. It's definitely a team effort. It's definitely hard work. It's as we say, it's the late nights and the weekends. It's the time away from your families. It's what we were mentioning here. It's making it a priority and then following up. It's having integrity and the core values that they both mentioned. Coming down was built on through the military, from parents, grandparents, and others in our community that do it. It's showcasing, we build on that trust to that relationship. So then when people say, hey, you're part of the Mighty Eight, they already know we're welcoming, we're going to be looking at this stuff, and we're respecting their opinion. Even though we can, debate, we can argue, we can do those kind of things, but it's not an emotional kind of thing that we're lashing out at people. It's doing it in a scientific, fact-based way that we can work together and really look at policies where we can impact others. And at the end of the day, we're trying to solve problems, like Stephanie was mentioning, and others. It's just, we have a lot of common areas within that. And the disagreements may be a tweak here or there on some of these different policies. A lot of times we're all for these, especially when it comes to committees. By the time it gets to the floor in the House, if you're working the freedoms that we have across the whole system, it's really well done, and the opportunities to voice these opinions are there. So yeah, it's definitely a team effort. And I'm looking forward to working with, we have the best team in the state, and it's too easy to tell everybody we're part of the Mighty Eighth and proud of that. And you're going to see a lot more. It's exciting. Looking forward to getting together with these guys and doing this in the Senate in the next session here.
That's great. One thing, and so you guys know, and Representative Barnard had led it for us for a number of years, but the Tri-Cities Legislative Council. So it's all of our local chambers of commerce and TriDec and Visit Tri-Cities invite local stakeholders together. We set up priorities, and so we're finalizing that. We're still kind of working on it. But one thing that came up relates to last year's session that'll, they'll be working through, I think, the details on it. That's transportation. But do you guys have any thoughts on transportation? I know when the original package came out, it wasn't bipartisan. It was passed by one party, and there weren't any, kind of East Side projects on it. So any opportunities for transportation? Obviously, we've talked about our growth and some of those impacts on housing, workforce, but then, transportation is another one that we see so many impacts from. Let's start with Representative Connors. What are you hearing about transportation? Is there an opportunity to get some of our local priorities funded this year in the session?
Well, we're certainly working on those priorities, now, and we do have our meetings with BFCOG and Good Roads next week to prioritize what's most important for the entire Tri-Cities to help get that funding here. We did meet with the city of Pasco this week as well to chat about their priorities. We hope so. We hope there was a lesson learned from the last transportation package
Yeah.
without the bipartisan support and without, I think, a little bit of money went to Spokane, but besides that, Eastern Washington really didn't get to see any benefit of it. I think we're learning, at least I'm learning a lot about how do we manage these priorities and what are the keywords that we use to try to get those dollars to come effectively to the Tri-Cities, focusing on some of the priorities that we have that are safety issues or that meet the criteria of like the bike ped pass that they want within on the west side as part of their priorities. And so I think we're going to be working very, very hard on that, even though I didn't hear any of us say transportation was necessarily on our top 3 committees. It is important to us all. Transportation is a pretty full committee. Everybody wants to be on it. So trying to get on it is also a hard thing for us to do. But we will be there. We will be fighting for that, as well as hopefully keeping a couple of the representatives that are within our Tri-City caucus on that transportation, because transportation runs from here to Walla Walla to Prosser to, North Franklin County. So.
You bet. Representative Barnard, any more insights or thoughts about transportation, how to, get some more local projects on the list?
Yeah, well, I have some feelings about that, Carl. So I have so much to say that it would take way too long, and we could talk about it for hours. Okay. But I mean, let's just say I'll add on to April's comments, which were really relevant and true. But at the same time, we still have this opportunity to work on transportation. We don't have to be on the committee. And so if the Mighty Eight, if we get together and form this, one voice, and it comes from from Good Roads and BFCOG and all the cities get together, and we get together and all of our stakeholders get together, then we will know which, what we're not going to get everything that everybody wants, and there's not going to be another transportation package go through anytime soon. So we're going to have to do these things in a way. We're going to have to be really, really intentional with what we're asking for and speak with one voice. So we can do that. It's just, we have to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're asking for the same things and work it from that angle. I know last year I testified a lot on the transportation committee, just saying, hey, here we are. Hey, Tri-Cities. I don't know. We don't have much of a stomach for, potholes on our streets, but at the same time, the trade-off is how do you fund some of these projects? I mean, they're big dollars, but if you couple that with other things, and if we're really strategic about it, broadband infrastructure, that dig once kind of thing. Matt, I know that's not what it is, but you know where I'm going with that. The broadband, the sidewalks, all of the things, and that go with the transportation needs. We have a list a mile long, but we can start checking off some of those projects and getting those to happen if we work together and really truly prioritize, which takes sacrifice sometimes.
Sure. Senator Boehnke, you want to round us out on this one?
Yeah, I would just add, it takes that relationship building that we've done, and you've mentioned the last couple. It's building that from historical side. So it took us years to get the Lewis Street overpass. It's being creative and working locally. So we had to work a lot and late nights, and a big kudos to the Pasco staff and even regional efforts in WSDOT. We're working, at least my only other addition would be on the supply chain caucus with the state, not to belabor, we're still in a crisis to where we might have a railroad strike here any day now. If that happens, that would shut down a lot in our state, a lot of the supply issues that we're seeing right before, probably one of the critical time in our, nation's history coming out of COVID, but also right before the holidays and things that are going on. We're already seeing shelves getting really shortened by the different supplies, whether it's food, whether it's the produce, whether it's the medicines. We're seeing some of that. I do have a couple bills working with legislations for department of licensing to try to do more of this online so we can continue some of the remote access. When we mentioned CDL shortage, getting those critical truck drivers on the roads, getting students to that, getting the apprentice programs aligned properly with federal government. There is some additional federal dollars that are coming to us that we can work on building up the trains, the railroad tracks, working with our employers on that, and then increasing the regional effort. If people haven't heard of, and this is a big shout out to some others, but working on our ports and our local communities on being relief to Seattle, Tacoma ports area, where there's a big congestion of trying to get that infrastructure inland. So we call it the inland seaport concept. We're going to be a big player in that, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years as well, because we are growing, we have land to grow, and we have a lot of community that people are starting to see us on that map. And we're going to be a big player, I believe, in the next couple of years as well.
Couldn't agree with you more. You're exactly right. We look forward to that inland seaport effort. I think you just hit on all our talking points. We should involve you in more conversations with companies when we're trying to sell them on the Tri-Cities, right?
Hey, if you buy the coffee, it's coffee with Karl. So,
all right. Next time I see you, I'm buying the coffee. We're down to just like 5 minutes, and I want to just ask you guys each a question. And it really comes from a thank you from our community. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. Until you are an elected official and you go through election campaigns, which are not easy. People don't understand. I know all you guys do door knocking, signs, forums, outreach, communications, fundraising, all these things. Like, it takes a lot to get where you guys are. And so, number one, I want to acknowledge that and thank you all for it. But then the second thing is, like, what motivates you? Why are you guys doing this? Like anybody, it's the beauty of our country, right? Anybody could be elected to office. You just have to put in the work to do it. So what motivates you guys to run for office, go through everything you already have, and then it's going to be a grind when you get to Olympia. There's no two ways about it. So I don't know. Let's start with Representative Connors. Why did you want to, and now you're going to represent all of us in the Mighty Eighth? What motivates you?
Well, it's hard to change from campaign mode to governing mode. I mean, because it's
Right.
two completely different things. What motivates me is the Tri-Cities, and I grew up here. I love the community. I've always loved helping in the community. Typically in the past, I've always been involved in things that have been pertain to my kids. I've been in the PTA. I volunteered to help the basketball team. I did all the marketing for the Academy of Children's Theater. I schlepped around and volunteered to do whatever I could. And through that, I got to meet a lot of people. And I was able, even through my job, to see what is needed here and how do we help. And it is a sacrifice to your family to leave and to go to Olympia for 4 months is what we're heading off to do. But I think it's important, and the giving back piece and trying to help our community in a bigger way was more important to me. One thing that I've always learned through real estate is never about selling the house. It's about the person. And so for the last 22 years, I've just been serving people rather than houses. And when you do that, it's super fulfilling to be able to, help put somebody in a home, sell a home for them. And we've gone through cycles of life for people. And for me, this is just a cycle for me to go through as well. It's time to maybe step back from helping my kids all the time and try to help others. So that's really why I'm doing it, is just to serve our area.
That's great. Thank you so much. Representative Barnard, how about you? Why are you doing this?
April said it really well. I think we're really all servants at heart. I am an empath, so when I see people suffering, it is frustrating to me, and I want to fix it. Working especially with the chamber during COVID and talking to businesses every day that were closed due to the mandate, that couldn't keep their business, or you have small businesses that the doors are closed, and these are mom and pops. These are mom and pops. Yeah, you have Walmart. There's a line around out, the whole building to get in to buy your things, and that was very eye-opening to me. And I just want to help. I want to help people. I want the Tri-Cities to be a place where people want to come and raise their families and want to stay. I don't want the brain drain. I want people to grow up here, go to school here, be employed here, get married here, and then, have a family and their grandchildren live here. That this is, I'm just a community person, and I care about people. And that's really why I ran. Every single bill that comes across my desk, I will ask myself, how will this affect the 8th? I mean, how will this, it's not that I don't care about the rest of the state, but that's why I'm here, is I want this region to flourish. I want our economy to thrive. I want to deliver as best I can, on the values of our community. So it's just such an honor. I'm so grateful to have been elected, and I will work so hard to justify the voters' faith in me. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. Senator Boehnke, you want to round us out on this way? Why are you doing this? What motivates you?
Well, thanks, Karl. Again, it's an honor to be with you today, and it's an honor and privilege to represent the 8th District, the mighty 8th, as we mentioned. Just privileged to be with these two amazing people on board as well today, and having them go through the heartache, and you mentioned the pain of really the campaign. It is a lot different than when people see it from the outside than actually doing it. You learn a lot about yourself, your family, and the real reasons you're running, and you get asked that every day when you're knocking on the door. When you're at a panel, you're at a committee, it kind of brings it to the heart of really, what are you about? And are you really going to be truthful to that word of doing it? We are here to solve problems. We are focused on those efforts. And I think mine goes back to my grandmother, who was PTA, and she was a kazoo team member in Vancouver, Washington. And we were growing up here in the Tri-Cities and helping out veterans in the communities. And she always made sure, no matter what, that we stay engaged in our community, and you're going to be active and involved. And that led to my parents as well, and upbringings that you mentioned, of that, whether it's sports, whether it's in community government, whether it's other things, it's be a big active piece of solving the problems in your community and continue that effort at the state level. I would add to what Stephanie was mentioning. I'm all about the 8th District, number one. So I think we do care about the state, but I know we want to push, and we do have a lot of great things to offer of what we can model from the 8th District across the nation. So again, thank you for having us today, Karl.
Yeah, thank all you guys. As always, I've run too long, but thank you all so much for your time today. This has been a really good discussion. Thank you for your service to the 8th and to our state. It really means a lot that you guys are willing to step up and do this for us. We'll be in touch during the session. Look forward to it. And, we'll advise people to go to your websites and to the House and Senate websites on ways they can get involved. And, whether it's showing up for a hearing and giving testimony on some of the legislation you're going to be working on, we as a community stand behind you guys. So thanks for your service. Thanks for your time today, and have a great weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much
for the
Karl.
coffee, Karl.
Yeah.
Yep, you bet.